I got a job delivering packages to closed cemeteries. I keep hearing that whisper in my ear whenever I think about that night. My boots were sinking into the wet grass, and the beam from my flashlight kept cutting in and out like it was struggling to stay alive. It was a little after 3 in the morning, and I was standing in the middle of Greenwood Cemetery with a padded envelope in my hands, addressed to someone who'd been dead since before I was even born. The fog was so thick, it felt like it was clinging to my clothes. Every breath I took came out shaky and too loud. Something moved just beyond the reach of my light, not walking, not running, just sliding from one stone to the next, like it didn't need to touch the ground. I tried telling myself it was the wind, but then I felt gravel crunch behind me. I froze. The gate had been locked when I came in. No one should have been back there. When I looked down, I saw fresh footprints in the dew leading straight toward me, bigger than mine, deeper, like whoever made them was right on my heels. And before I could even think to run, I heard my name whispered from somewhere behind a row of headstones. Soft, almost gentle, but too close. I shouldn't have taken that job. I shouldn't have opened that envelope. But the whole mess started days earlier, on what I thought was just another late-night delivery shift I picked up to help pay rent. Back then I was 24, broke, and trying to pretend I wasn't one missed rent payment away from sleeping in my car. I'd just been laid off from a warehouse job and was living in this damp basement studio that always smelled faintly like old laundry. The ceiling was low enough that I could touch the pipes if I stood on my toes. I spent most nights scrolling job listings until my eyes hurt, drinking whatever gas station coffee was on sale. I picked up the courier gig because it didn't ask a lot of questions. No background checks, no uniforms, no set schedule. Just pick up the packages, drop them off, send a photo, get paid. It wasn't glamorous, but the cash hit my account fast enough to keep me afloat. I was used to weird addresses, mechanics who only opened at night, farmhouses down miles of dirt roads, a guy who always wanted deliveries left inside his unlocked shed for reasons I never wanted to know. Night shifts do something to your brain. Things stop feeling strange because everything feels strange at that hour. Marv was the dispatcher. He always acted like he'd been woken up from a nap he didn't want to take. Raspy voice, sour attitude, coughing between every sentence. But he paid on time, and in the late-night gig economy, that counted as a personality trait. He'd usually text me a batch of addresses around 10 or 11 at night, and I'd head out with whatever coffee I could stomach. I'd roll into the same gas station before my shift and chat with the night cashier, Cody, a college kid who always had some story about car trouble or his weird roommate. It was one of the few normal parts of my routine. The first time Marv sent me the cemetery address, I honestly thought he made a typo. It said, Greenwood Cemetery, after hours drop, follow instructions. I laughed to myself and showed it to Cody when I stopped in for my energy drink. He raised an eyebrow, but he grinned and said something about Halloween coming early. We both joked about it for a minute, but when I texted Marv to double check, he replied almost immediately, correct address, don't skip it, client pays extra. His tone, if you can even call it tone through text, felt different. No sarcasm, no passive-aggressive jab, just blunt and flat. I shrugged it off. Delivery drivers get sent to odd places all the time. Besides, it wasn't like I was going to be walking around inside the place. I figured someone lived near the cemetery or was using the address for a property next door. That happens. People do weird things to get packages delivered. Still, when I pulled up the first time, something about it made me turn the radio down. You know that feeling when you're about to do something routine, but something deep in your stomach whispers that you should rethink it? I remember sitting in the driver's seat with the engine idling, staring at the chained gate and wondering why anyone needed something delivered here at midnight. I didn't see anything strange that first night. Not really. Just the sense that the air inside the fence felt different, heavier, colder, as if the whole cemetery was holding its breath. But looking back, that was the moment the job stopped being just a job. That was the night something, or someone, noticed me. The first weird thing didn't even seem supernatural at the time. It just felt wrong. The instructions said to leave the small brown package at the maintenance shed inside the cemetery grounds. When I got there, the gate was chained, but the instructions had a note, use side access. I thought that meant a service entrance or something. Instead, I found a section of fencing behind a big oak tree where the links were pulled apart just enough for a person to slip through. It didn't look cut or bent, more like stretched, as if someone or something had been squeezing through it for years. I told myself groundskeepers probably used it and ducked inside. The temperature dropped hard, like I'd stepped into a walk-in freezer. My breath actually fogged. Everything was quiet except for the noise of my own footsteps echoing too loud on the gravel path. I kept checking over my shoulder, not because I was scared yet, but because the silence felt unnatural. No crickets, no wind, no distant cars, just me and old stones. The maintenance shed was a small wooden structure with peeling paint and a warped door that didn't close all the way. When I lifted the latch, it groaned loud enough to make me wince. Someone had nailed an old clipboard to the door with yellowed papers curling at the edges. I glanced at it and froze. The delivery logs were decades old. Faded ink, dated names, signatures from people who probably weren't alive anymore. One date said 1976, another said 1983. I ran my finger across a signature and it smudged like the ink had never dried properly. I set the package down, snapped the required photo and backed out. I was halfway down the path when I noticed something standing between two rows of headstones. At first, I thought it was a statue. Tall, maybe 6'3", with long shoulders and its head tilted slightly. But the cemetery didn't have statues. I remembered that from the entrance sign. Traditional burial grounds, no sculptures, no monuments larger than standard headstones. I blinked, and it wasn't there anymore. Nothing moved, no rustle, no sound, just gone. I told myself I'd mixed up shadows and shapes. Cemeteries play tricks on the eyes, especially at night. By the time I reached my car, my nerves had mostly settled. I clicked my key fob, expecting the locks to pop open. They didn't. I tried again. Nothing. The light on the fob glowed, so it wasn't the battery. That's when I heard it. This faint rhythmic tapping on the back window of my car. Not hard, not frantic, just a gentle tap, 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 like someone was waiting politely for me to turn around. I spun, ready for some drunk teenager messing around, but there was no one there. Just my car covered in dew except for the patch where the tapping must have been. It looked smeared, like a hand had dragged slowly downward. The doors finally unlocked, and I practically dove inside. I sat there with the engine running, staring at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone sitting in the back seat. Nothing happened on the drive home, nothing moved, nothing followed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something in that cemetery had seen me, and that it wasn't finished with me yet. Over the next few nights, the cemetery stops kept showing up on my route. Not just Greenwood anymore. 2 new ones, Hillside Memorial and St Agnes Rest, both closed to the public after sunset, both with instructions that sounded copy-pasted from the first job. Same tone, same phrasing, same weirdly specific drop-off details like place box on second step, or leave envelope on west-facing windowsill. I told myself someone was just using abandoned locations as dead drop spots for shady reasons. Drugs, stolen goods, who knows? That bothered me, but it still felt like something human, something explainable. But then the pattern started. No matter which cemetery I drove to, I'd see someone standing far away, in almost the exact same pose. Back turned, shoulders hunched, head angled like they were listening to something. Always in a different spot, always around the edge of my vision, and always gone if I stared too long. I never got close enough to make out details. It was like they knew how to stay just out of clear sight. I started hearing this scraping sound too. At first I thought it was branches dragging on a fence, or maybe a loose shutter banging in the wind, but it never matched the weather. Sometimes it happened on perfectly still nights. A slow, dry scrape. Scrape, scrape, like someone dragging a long stick across stone. It followed me from cemetery to cemetery, always starting soft like it was warming up. By the third night, the noise had rhythm, almost like breathing patterns. I'd hear it behind me, then to my left, then from somewhere deeper in the rows of graves. My sleep got messed up. I'd crash at dawn and wake up sweating, heart racing, sometimes convinced someone was standing at the foot of my bed. I'd check the locks 3 or 4 times before leaving for work. I'd catch myself staring at reflective surfaces, looking for movement behind me. I stopped joking around with Cody at the gas station. Even he noticed I was getting jumpy. One night, I finally asked Marv what the hell was going on with all the cemetery drops. He didn't even pretend to care. He just told me the clients paid extra for sensitive delivery windows and that my job was to follow instructions and stop asking questions. His voice cracked weirdly when he said that last part, like he was nervous. I'd never heard him nervous before. Then came the packages. They started to get stranger. The labels didn't look like normal shipping labels anymore. They were printed on thicker paper, almost like cardstock, and the ink looked slightly smeared, as if someone had printed them with a dying ribbon typewriter. Some of the names matched headstones I'd walked past earlier in the week, and the dates, this was the thing that got me. They weren't birth or death dates, they were delivery dates. Years in the past, years in the future. One night at Hillside Memorial, I dropped off a small box near an old mausoleum. When I got back to my car, there was another box sitting right in front of my bumper. I hadn't heard anyone approach. I hadn't seen anyone cross the grounds. The air had been completely still, but this box had my full legal name typed across the label. I didn't touch it at first. I just stood there with my hand hovering above it, feeling my stomach twist with this sick, heavy feeling. It was the wrong size, too. The other packages were usually small envelopes or simple cardboard boxes. This one was long and thin, like it was made to hold something delicate or fragile. I picked it up and felt something slide from one end to the other, like metal shifting. Cold metal. That was when I realised the scraping sound wasn't coming from around me anymore. It was coming from inside the box. I dropped it so fast it thudded against the pavement and the scraping stopped instantly. The silence that followed felt too intentional, like something was waiting. I drove home with my hands shaking the whole way, checking my mirrors every few seconds. I kept thinking about that figure, how it always stood the same way, how it never moved like a normal person, how it always turned up at the exact places I was supposed to be. And the awful part was, I couldn't tell if it was following me, or if it was waiting for me. It was pouring that night, the kind of rain that bounces off the pavement so hard it looks like steam. My wipers were useless, smearing more water across the windshield than they cleared. I almost cancelled the shift, but I needed the money, and the rest of the route looked normal enough. I figured if I skipped the cemetery stop, Marv would never notice. When I saw the address pop up, Greenwood again, I felt this dull throb in my chest, like my body knew something I didn't. The package was sitting in the pickup locker outside Marv's office. I knew right away it was different. The paper was damp, as if someone had been holding it with wet hands. No return address, no client name, just the destination, Greenwood Cemetery. And below that, a time stamped in red ink, 2:40 a.m. Like it wasn't a suggestion, but an appointment. I drove slower than usual, trying to convince myself I wasn't scared, just cautious because of the weather, but the closer I got, the more it felt like the storm was swallowing the world. My radio only played static. The GPS kept recalculating even though I was driving in a straight line. Every streetlight I passed flickered as if reacting to me. When I turned onto the road leading to the cemetery, I saw right away that the gate was already open. Wide open. The chains were hanging loose, swaying even though the wind wasn't hitting them. It was the first time I didn't have to park and squeeze through the fence. I should have taken that as a sign to turn around. Inside, the rain wasn't as loud. The trees were thick enough to shelter some of it, but the quiet made everything worse. My flashlight barely worked. The beam flickered so much it felt like I was strobing through the headstones, catching brief glimpses of crosses, granite slabs, angel carvings, then something else, something tall, bending over a grave like it was studying the dirt. I kept walking because I didn't know what else to do. Every step felt heavier, like the mud was trying to pull me under. The scraping sound started again, soft at first, then louder. It circled me. It moved behind the stones, weaving between them like it knew the layout by heart. I spun around, trying to catch it in my light, but all I saw were shifting shadows and rain sliding down polished stone. The package in my hand grew colder, so cold it burned. The paper felt like frozen skin. I lifted it closer to see the label again, and that's when I realised the ink wasn't smeared from the rain. It was running downward, like the letters were melting. The sound inside started tick, 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 faster and faster, as if the thing inside was reacting to something around us. Then I saw it. The figure, not far away anymore. It had unfolded itself from behind a row of graves rising taller than I remembered. Its shoulders were too sharp, too long, and its head hung at this awful, listening angle. I couldn't see its face. I couldn't even tell if it had one. It just stood there, spine bent like it was considering me. The scraping stopped. The rain muted. My flashlight clicked off on its own. I don't know why I opened the box. Maybe panic, maybe instinct, maybe because the darkness made it feel like whatever was inside it was the only solid thing left. The cardboard tore wetly, and an avalanche of old photographs spilled into the mud. Black and white Polaroids, faded prints, all of people standing in cemeteries, every one of them staring straight at the camera. Halfway through the pile, I saw a photo of me standing at the Greenwood gate from the first night, taken from behind the stones. My breath hitched because I remembered looking round, thinking someone was watching me. Someone had been. A sound broke the silence, my own name whispered in my voice right behind my ear. I ran. I didn't look where I was going. The rain blinded me, headstones slammed into my knees, my shoulder hit a tree hard enough to send sparks across my vision. I heard footsteps that didn't sound human, too fast, too irregular, closing in behind me. The scraping returned, louder, frenzied. Something brushed the back of my coat, a hand or something like one. I saw lights then, headlights sweeping across the path near the gate, a police cruiser rolling slowly past, probably checking on storm damage. The figure stopped moving. The sounds cut off like someone had hit a switch. I stumbled out of the trees and into the beams of the patrol car, covered in mud, shaking so hard I almost fell. The officer jumped out, hand on his holster, until he realized I was just some soaked idiot carrying a ruined box. He asked me what I was doing there. I told him I had a delivery. He frowned and shined his flashlight toward the cemetery. "This place has been closed for 20 years, he said. "Gate shouldn't even be open. Who the hell let you in?" I didn't have an answer. Not one he'd believe. I just kept staring past him at the darkness between the trees, where the tall figure had been standing seconds before. And even though nothing moved, I swear the shadows were still watching me breathe. I quit the courier job the next morning without even sending a formal message. I blocked Marv's number, deleted the app, and piled the ruined packages in a trash bag so I wouldn't have to look at them. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt that hand on my coat again, dragging just enough to let me know it was real. My heart kept jolting awake at random hours, like my body was bracing for something that hadn't happened yet. I tried filing a police report, but the officer who interviewed me looked bored halfway through. He said break-ins at abandoned cemeteries weren't unheard of, and that the footprints and scraping sounds were probably just storm debris. I showed him the photographs that had spilled from the box, including the one of me at the gate. He didn't look closely. He just pushed them back across the table and said they weren't evidence of anything criminal. I didn't know how to argue with that without sounding insane. Back home, basement apartment felt smaller than ever. Damp walls, thin windows, the kind of place where you can't tell if a sound is coming from inside or outside. For the first time since I moved in, I noticed how close my bed was to the ground-level window facing the alley. Anyone could walk right up to it. Anyone could watch. The first night after the incident, I heard the scraping again, just once. Faint, like it was testing the air. I sat up in bed so fast the springs squeaked. My ears strained for movement, for footsteps. Nothing else happened. But that one sound was enough to keep me awake until sunrise. I tried telling myself it was just rainwater dragging something along the concrete, or a raccoon, or a neighbour taking out trash. But the more I tried to rationalise it, the more obvious it became that I'd heard that exact rhythm before. The same slow drag. The same pause afterward, like something was listening for me to react. A few days later, a padded envelope showed up in my mail slot. No return address, no postage stamp, just my name written exactly the way it had appeared on the cemetery box. Inside was a single photograph, fresh, glossy, and unmistakably new. It showed the Greenwood Cemetery gate closed and chained like it was supposed to be. My car was parked in front of it. The angle of the shot was from somewhere deep within the trees, as if someone had been watching from inside the cemetery the night everything went wrong. I don't remember dropping it on the floor, but I remember the way my hands shook after. I double-checked the locks, then triple-checked. I pulled the curtains tight and pushed a chair against the door like some cheap barricade would make a difference. The worst part came that night around 3 a.m. I was lying awake, stomach tight, every muscle wired. Just when I started to think I might be paranoid, I heard soft footsteps in the gravel alley behind my window. Slow, deliberate. One step, then another, then another. They stopped directly beneath my window. No scraping, no whisper, just breathing, steady, patient. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, every hair on my body standing straight up, waiting for whatever was outside to do something. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Then the footsteps continued, moving away the same pace they'd arrived. I didn't sleep after that, and honestly, I'm not sure I've really slept since. People tell me I overthink what happened, that I let one bad night get inside my head, but I know what I saw. Or maybe what I felt is the better word. There's a point where your instincts stop lying to you. Mine changed that night. Something in that cemetery recognized me, and once something like that notices you, I don't think it ever fully forgets. I don't go near graveyards anymore. I cross the street if one's even in view. I quit all-night jobs. I stopped driving the back roads I used to cut through. Sometimes I wonder if it was a person, someone who lived out there among the stones and knew how to move silently. Other times I wonder if it was something that had been there long before the fences, long before the delivery instructions, long before I showed up with my flashlight shaking in my hand. The way it whispered my name in my own voice still makes my stomach turn. Whatever it was, it paid attention to me in a way no person ever has. I think about those packages too, the names on them, the dates, the way some of them matched headstones exactly. That wasn't an accident. Whoever or whatever was expecting those deliveries wasn't doing it for convenience. Those drops were part of something, a system, a ritual, a schedule I never should have stepped into. Sometimes, late at night when I'm half awake, I hear the faint scrape of something along stone, even though there's no stone anywhere near my apartment. I tell myself it's just inside my head, but I never open my eyes until morning. And every now and then, right before I fall asleep, I swear I hear my name whispered like it's being tested, like something is making sure it still pronounces it right. Last week I opened my door and found a small damp box sitting on the mat. Same kind of paper, same weight. Cold to the touch. The label had my name again, but this time it had a delivery date printed on the bottom corner. A date that hasn't happened yet. I didn't sign for it. I didn't order anything. But I left it sitting there, because I don't think refusing it will make any difference. Something out there still expects me to complete my part of the route, and deep down, I think it's only a matter of time before it comes to collect what it thinks I owe.